the city that never sleeps is waking up to a new reality. Late on Sunday night, the mayor of New York tweeted that nightclubs, cinemas, theatres and concert venues in the city must close.
Tonight, the San Francisco Bay Area, just hours away from the unprecedented order. 7 million people told to go home and stay home for 3 weeks, starting at midnight. The move aimed at bringing bustling city streets to a virtual standstill and closing nearly all businesses, the most dramatic and drastic step in the country.
These measures will be disruptive to day-to-day life, but there is no need to panic.
While the president said a nationwide quarantine is not under consideration for now, he did urge Americans to stay away from groups larger than 10 people.
No matter where you look, this is something, it's an invisible enemy.
The president predicting the virus could spread through summer. At subways, city stations, and iconic venues, more are keeping their distance. The White House with this new warning.
The reason we're taking these strong and bold steps is because we know there is virus spread before you develop symptoms.
Italy remains under a nationwide lockdown, and the effects of social distancing are plain to see. Rome's Piazza del Popolo, the People's Square, all but deserted. Empty canals also in Venice. Normally overrun by tourists, the streets of Venice are now being decontaminated. In Bulgaria, as elsewhere, people are lining up to stock up on supplies should they have to isolate themselves. But in many supermarkets, shelves are bare. In Spain, the government is set to declare a 2-week state of emergency and announce increased measures to control the COVID-19 outbreak. Already, famous tourist sites like Barcelona's landmark Sagrada Familia Basilica have been closed off. France has also ordered closures of cultural and tourist attractions. Both the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre Museum are closed to the public. But for the city's few remaining tourists, at least one typical Parisian attraction remained open. The Moulin Rouge was open for business Friday night, but only to celebrate its last night before 2 closing its doors.
We know that from Monday schools will be closed, so we'll stay at home. I have 3 children, so I'll work from home starting Monday, I think. Tonight we'll have a good night because it's the last.
Symptoms.
As a growing number of cities, including New York and LA, ban restaurants and bars from seating customers, delivery service and drive-thrus are becoming the only options. Theaters, gyms, and a long list of several major retailers are shuttered, while brands like Starbucks are only open for pickups.
A burger, a veggie melt, and an ice cream sandwich? Yep.
One fine dining restaurant in Seattle now delivering burgers.
This is about feeding a city that is hungry.
With fear driving some to hoard food, many grocery stores are operating on modified hours, allowing older shoppers in at earlier times. But in California, the governor says anyone 65 or older should self-isolate at home. For thousands, getting home was the problem. At O'Hare International, massive crowds trickled through enhanced screenings for the coronavirus.
I definitely felt unsafe. If the government's telling me to stay in groups of less than 50 and keep social distancing, that was the opposite.
As school districts in cities big and small close down, a dozen hotels and casinos on the Las Vegas Strip are set to go dark. Primary voting in Ohio has been postponed, as a symbol of America is now closed on Liberty Island. Lisa Merck, a nurse in Colorado, is recovering from the virus.
I started getting really sweaty, and then I felt like I kind of wanted to collapse, and I remember like having almost this burning sensation, you know, when you take a deep breath.
Tonight, Americans in uncharted territory, changing the way we gather and the cities we live in.
We'll always consider the safety and the security of British nationals. So with immediate effect, I've taken the decision to advise British nationals against non-essential travel globally for an initial period of 30 days, and of course, subject to ongoing review. Now, Mr. Speaker, I should emphasise this decision has been taken based on the domestic measures introduced here in the UK, alongside the changes to border and a range of other restrictions which are now being taken by countries right around the world. The speed and the range of those measures across other countries is unprecedented.
We've been talking about the fact that people are staying away from towns and cities. This is the scene in Trafalgar Square. A bright spring day, normally full of tourists. As you can see, it is absolutely deserted. These are the streets of London at the moment. Still some traffic about. We know that many people are still travelling. Lots of buses you can see on the streets down there. But in terms of people on the streets, the numbers, footfall, tourists, shoppers are really, really quiet. That's Piccadilly Circus. Normally really busy at this time of day. Lunchtime on a bright spring morning should be full of people, but many, many people obviously not coming into London today, heeding the government's advice to stay at home, work from home if they possibly can.
Inside the fight to survive the coronavirus.
Yeah, that's the cough.
This is now life for Kevin Harris. Medical professionals visiting him in the hospital in Ohio are limited and wearing full protective gear.
That's you, and that's me.
The 55-year-old says he started feeling sick about 2 weeks ago after traveling from his home in Warren, Ohio to Cleveland. Doctors then treated him for the flu and sent him home. But his fever and dry cough, a primary symptom of the virus, only got worse. On Friday night, he posted this video to Facebook from his hospital bed, convinced he wouldn't survive the weekend.
Do I want to die suffocating and then going into cardiac arrest?
But this morning, good news from Harris's doctors, who say his lung function is improving.
It's uncharted territory.
This morning, people caring for patients also sharing first-hand accounts. On Instagram, a New York herbalist documenting her struggle to care for her parents, both of whom are infected. She says she's never seen something attack the lungs like this, adding, quote, "I'm powerless against this thing. I can't sleep because I'm so terrified about my dad's breathing, just sitting outside his door."
Having some mild symptoms.
Miami's Mayor Francis Suarez is also sharing his recovery from the virus, hoping to calm some fears.
I feel well. Certainly, I'm sure I'm going to feel symptoms, but I want to document them and let the public know so that they can hopefully have a sense of comfort.
As for Harris, he doesn't know when he'll leave the hospital, and he believes the pandemic will change the world.
It already has, and I think it's going to bring everybody closer.
Italy's coronavirus epidemic, already the second most deadly after China, has taken another dramatic turn. With more than 60 million people, the country's entire population under lockdown from Tuesday. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says he's extending restrictions on movement after another spike in deaths from the coronavirus. All public gatherings are banned and schools and universities closed until April the 3rd.
Non ci sarà più. There will no longer be a red zone. There will no longer be a zone 1 and zone 2 in the country. There will only be Italy, a protected zone. So across the whole peninsula, people should avoid all movement, unless they are for 3 specific reasons: for work, emergencies, or health reasons.
16 million people in the north of the country have been under lockdown since Sunday. Riots in 24 prisons across Italy followed restrictions on face-to-face visits. In Modena, 6 inmates died after they broke into the prison infirmary and overdosed on stocks of the heroin substitute methadone.
As a warning, they posted some posters which say we can only go inside wearing a mask. They're only allowing visits of 1 family member at a time.
This was a hint of what chaos might ensue if the virus were to enter the confines of the prison system. It is almost everywhere else in Italy. These were rare scenes filmed inside a hospital in the northern town of Cremona. And also on lockdown, the financial capital Milan, one of the engines of the economy. Europe's major stock markets from Milan to Frankfurt, Paris and London all suffered dramatic falls on Monday, with share prices plummeting as the infection rate soars. The economic impact of the coronavirus is already substantial and will only grow. There are discomforting comparisons being made to the 2008 financial crisis, with concerns for the preparedness of European banks and businesses. On Tuesday, EU leaders will meet to try to come up with a unified response. But they won't meet here in person in Brussels with its steadily growing infection rate. Instead, they'll be holding a teleconference. The circumstances of this unique crisis continue to evolve. Although not yet into a pandemic, says the World Health Organization, in which transmission of the virus is uncontrolled.
Now that the virus has a foothold in so many countries, the threat of a pandemic has become very real. But it would be the first pandemic in history that could be controlled.
There are signs of success against the virus in China, South Korea and Singapore, but not yet in Europe. Spain looks set to launch what's being described as shock therapy measures, possibly following France and Germany with school closures and restricted public gatherings.
Their president says the country is at war. They've passed their training and they're ready to be sent to the front lines. The South Korean President Moon Jae-in inspects the newest recruits as he deploys the military in the fight against the coronavirus.
The entire country has declared war against the infectious disease, as the crisis in some provinces has reached the highest point.
It's a tough first mission. South Korea has reported the most cases outside of mainland China. In the capital Seoul, drive-through test centres allow residents to get a checkup with minimal human contact, while smaller towns are subjected to thorough disinfection measures. The World Health Organization says the effort is working. The virus hasn't spread to new communities in South Korea.